Cujo Sound. This is the final video in the series about my vacation recordings from a phone. This video is all about putting them into Unity, because in the previous video we edited them and made sure that they sounded great. Now we're going to put them into Unity, make sure that Unity acts the way we want it to, and then you will see that we can easily create a soundscape recorded with the cheapest of cheap microphones. Let's get to it. Here in Unity, I have first of all imported all our assets into a folder here in our project hierarchy. All these rain grotto sounds and other things. All these sounds are great and we can use them for a lot of things. Obviously, they can be polished and changed forever and ever, about 1,000 times more. But the point is that they already work and we can make them work with these systems that we have created in some of the previous videos. And that I've been recording these on my vacation with my phone. So in case you just happen to be near some cool rain or a cool sound, your phone can create the right material for you. If we take a look at it here, then you might notice that I've changed a couple of things in some of these scripts, and I've also added some scripts. And I'll explain that in a minute. The first thing we had to do was to clean up and fix a bug in this audio position script, because in our audio position script, we had established that if something was crossing or staying inside of the collider, then the emitter should follow the listener's position. That's a problem because there are many boxes and other things inside this area here, which will then cause it to think that we have penetrated the collider. In order to deal with that, we've gone into our audio position script here, as you may remember, where we establish all our physical needs and all the calculations that we need. And what we do down here in the code is that we have a private void onTrigger stay. It's triggering if we're staying inside the collider, and if that happens, we call it other. It used to be just these two lines of code. If you're not in area, then we make sure that now we know that you are in the area, and the audio emitter's transform position becomes the same as our listener position. And whenever we leave, this Boolean here becomes false again. Now that's a problem if the game thinks that all of these objects inside of the collider are also us. We solve that by going up into our third-person controller here. It could be any controller, any object that you do this to. But in our case, this is the actual character that we have, as you see here. And I have given it a tag up here in tag called player. The reason why we give it this tag is that then we can control that only objects with this tag can penetrate this specific collider. So back here in our script, we've added this specific line because this is the collider that we are checking for if something is on trick or stay inside it. And whatever goes through it, we call other. So if that instance of other.gameObject.tag is not equal player, then return. That means that these two lines of code are never executed. So our audio emitter's transform position will constantly be the one that we have set here, whereas it will stay within the boundaries that we have set and move about along the walls of the collider unless we enter the collider, and then it will start following us. Now I had to add this other script here for the sake of aesthetics, because the example of just moving about and listening to this rain stuff was nice, but not nice enough when going inside and outside of buildings. As you can see here, we have this collider here, which is covering this building. And the emitter that we have set is inside this collider, and it's set to a max distance of 20 meters, which means that 20 meters outside of the collider, we will be able to hear this sound. Now, there are sounds outside of here. There's one, for example, called main outside, which is covering this huge area. And that is just supposed to be acting as a 2D sound. It's not meant to actually move about with you, but it does because the system that we made does so. Now, that emitter follows us both inside and outside of this building here. So once we go inside this building, I have created a small script here, which I'll show you, where we can track some audio mixer snapshots that we can then change. I've quickly made this script called audio area snapshot. To begin with, I just wanted it to control one inside and outside snapshot, which was called whenever we go inside or outside of the collider, it would just set these. But that was not enough, so I made a public array of inside snapshots and a public array of outside snapshots. And a public value, which is a transition timer that can be changed per instance per prefab so that we can control it. In this method, void onTriggerEnter, that means that if we enter this collider, we just have to make sure that it can only be the player's tag that does so. And if it's not the player's tag, then this if method is never executed. And up here, we've made a public bool called active snapshot, which means that we can turn it on and off manually with a button inside of Unity here. If the player enters the collider, it checks, is this an active snapshot changer? And if it's not, then it just returns and doesn't do this code. So to begin with, what I wanted was simply to have it just transition to the snapshot that I've called inside, the one that we established up here, but I've commented out because we had to do with more of them. Then I've created this here so that it checks that for each audio mixer snapshot, and we've named those inside snap, in whatever is in the array of inside snapshots, all of these have this command called transition to transition timer so that we can set multiple snapshots every time we enter or exit this collider. You can see it here. On this object, I have two, both in and out. So I have one here that controls that when we're inside the snapshot, it calls the snapshot called indoor, and it calls one called muffled. That is because these control things in our audio mixer. Down here, we have our audio mixer, and we can see over here in our script, we can just lock it so that it will stay, that once we enter this collider inside this building, it triggers one snapshot called indoor in amp building. So let's click amp building here. And as you can see, there's indoor and outdoor. And this controls some of the volumes and also controls some of the high passing and low passing of this specific front building sound that I have here. As you can see, whenever I change this, the cutoff frequency for the low pass changes when we're indoor. That basically just muffles the sound a little bit. The sound is located here, and it's around this fence or wall there is around this building, so that when we get closer to this area, this sound will play and be very clear when we're inside this area. Once we leave the area, it will have an attenuation of 50 meters, but I've made the curve really steep so that you can hear it slowly as you're approaching. And then as you cross this border, it will be totally clear and it will act as a 2D sound when we're walking about here. But then once we go into the inside building area, which is basically inside of itself, then it will be muffled because we set this snapshot. The muffled snapshot here, which is on the amp main outside controls here, I've just made two, one called normal and one called muffled, which basically just controls volume, high pass and low pass just as before. What this does is that we have an overall sound that acts as a 2D sound, which is then muffled when we enter the building. Now remember maybe from the vampire videos and some of the other videos too, where it's explained that if you have these 3D emitters placed around your level, you can mask those up and mask the transitions between them by having an overall 2D sound in the background with all those. That sound can, of course, still be faded in and out and controlled with lots of filters and so on, but if it is there, it works as sort of like a masking layer between all of these 3D sounds that are there in the background. Okay, let's get to it. Let's actually try and play the game for a little bit. We start here. Over here by this tower, I've added a small sound so that it sounds a little bit extra like you're approaching a structure. Right behind us is this building with a metal roof or like a metal door. I've added a small sound there as well. And over in the building that I just showed you on our left is all of these massive transition things going on where you can go indoors and outdoors. So let's take a look at it here. Basically, you just need to add footsteps to the character and a bit of movement, and you will already have a level that is completely alive and lots of things going on. To set these snapshots, you just create a mixer. I usually create a mixer almost per area, per sound, and then I create these groups down here where I can transition, and then I create these groups down here that I send stuff to. The reason why I create as many of these mixers as possible is because each mixer can only have 1 or 2 snapshots. Sure, you can transition between them, but if you have one snapshot, then it controls all of your groups that you have located inside it. And that becomes a problem if you only have one mixer called ambience, and you're trying to control indoor, front building, indoor details, and other things at one go, then you need more of these mixers. But that's basically it. Right now, you are watching a game engine running an outdoor scenario where we are walking around and we are listening to some rain. Of course, you can polish these sounds and you can do lots of things to them. You can create them differently. You can manipulate them even more with these audio mixers and buses, and you can treat them as part of other sounds that you want to do for your game. But the whole point is that, and this is the culmination of all these videos about this, that these are all recordings done with a phone that I've just picked up, recorded some random rain during my vacation, and right now you're looking at them working in a game engine. We've created some very, very simple scripts by just controlling in and out walking of an audio area snapshot, which then changes our snapshots. And in the previous videos about Unity, we've changed it so that it controls that these emitters move along the borders of our colliders that we have set, like this one here. It moves along the border here so that it acts as a 2D sound when we're inside it, and once you leave it, it sticks to the wall of the collider and then stays within these boundaries. And then it starts working and use the max distance that we have set over here in the attenuation. That means that you don't need super expensive equipment to actually record a soundscape like this. Just add some footsteps to the character's animation and you would quite quickly have a very, very trustworthy soundscape that you could walk around in. And if you spend a little more time manipulating these sounds and assets, you could quite quickly get a very, very professional sounding soundscape. I hope you enjoyed this video and learned a lot about that you can actually record professional assets with the most cheap equipment that you can find. Sure, good microphones and expensive microphones are nice to have, but they are not necessarily what you need to get started. And creating a small script like this is very, very easy. And if you want to know more about that, you should check out some of my other Unity videos about creating audio design scripts. These scripts are aimed at how sound designers want these scripts to happen and how we want them to work, but also coded from a sound designer's perspective. I do not take for granted that you know coding whatsoever, because I don't myself. So I'm trying to explain it to the best of my knowledge for normal people, like non-programmers, because programmers, they do black magic, as we all know. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you enjoyed the rest of the videos. Before we leave, of course I have to ask you to please like and subscribe if you like this video. And if you really, really like it, you should consider heading over to patreon.com/Cujo Sound, where you for as little as $1 a month can help me sustain this channel and help me create quality content like this, and you'll learn a lot from it, I guarantee it. You also gain access to career guidance, help with your projects, all the questions that you may have about scripting, audio programming, audio design, implementation, whatsoever. I'm there to answer it for you. So please consider it. I would really, really appreciate it. I hope you learned something, and if you have any questions, fire away in the comments below. Thank you very much for watching. Cujo Sound, signing out.